Resourceful Designer, episode 169. Why fixed prices are better than hourly billing.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host. He's willing to try any food once, Mark Dickout.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for pressing that little triangular play button on whatever device it is that you are listening. I do appreciate you spending a little bit of time listening to me as we discuss running a graphic design business. Now, in this episode, I'm going to talk about why you should stop billing by the hour if that's the way you're doing it, and switch to a fixed-based pricing method. And I'm also going to share a resource of the week that will help you with your color management. Now, I always like to start off every episode with a little recap of what I've been up to since the last time we've talked. I had a busy week in the administrative part of it. On Monday, I sent out 4 new contracts and 2 proposals, although I'm recording this late in the week and have yet to receive a single one of them back. But I'm not worried about the contracts, as sometimes people take time to read them over and double check everything, and they'll get back to me soon enough. They had already agreed to the proposal, so the contract's just a formality. Speaking of proposals, there is one. It was a logo design proposal I sent out, and I haven't heard back from them yet, but it seemed like such an intriguing idea and a fun challenge as far as a logo goes that I've already started designing some stuff for it. I don't even know if I have the job or not. It's just I had some time and I started sketching and I went on to Illustrator and started fooling around with some ideas that were popping into my head just in case I get the job. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I do get that one. If not, oh well, it was some fun experimenting with things, but I don't know. Do you ever feel that way sometimes where you get an idea and you just have to start working on it right away? Well, that's what happened with this. I presented the proposal to the client and they seemed very receptive and they were going to get back to me. And as soon as I was done and we had discussed some things and I came up with some ideas, I got right down to work on it and hopefully it'll pay off. If not, as I said, it was fun. I also got to design a poster for a local Highland Games festival that happens every year. This is a long-standing client. I've designed posters for them. I don't even know how many years. This goes back to days when I was at the print shop. But they contacted me actually in a bit of a rush last week and said, Mark, we're behind the time with this one, and can you design a poster? And they supplied something that was already done by somebody else, I think a local newspaper. And they said, this is what we started using for something. Is there any way you can design a poster that kind of falls in line with it? So it wasn't a bad design, but I think my poster improved on it. But it's always fun and challenging, especially posters that have a lot of information to go on them and photos and all sorts of things. So it was a little bit of a challenge, but I got that one done. Actually sent out. It's my contact has approved it, but I'm just waiting. She has to show it to the president of the organization of the festival to get final approval, but that is more or less just a formality. So I should have that approval this afternoon. So that was a fun project to work on. And that's just a couple of things I've been up to. Now, this week's resource of the week that I want to share with you is something I believe I've shared on the podcast before. In fact, I'm almost positive I have, because I've talked about many different sources for creating color palettes. Well, today I want to talk about Adobe's own contribution to the color picking resources out there, and that's color.adobe.com. Now, you may be familiar with this one. I use it from time to time. I still prefer Coolers. That's still my go-to for creating color palettes. I've tried many different ones, and I always end up going back to Coolers. But what I liked about colors.adobe.com that I didn't know they were capable of doing, I only found this out within the last couple of weeks, is once you create a color palette, and it's a little strange how you do this. You actually have to create the color palette and then save it to your color palettes before you can do this. But you can click on a button and it'll tell you what the Pantone colors are of the colors you chose. So that's pretty cool. Now, it isn't as accurate as I would like it to be. I tested it out with a few and some of the colors were way off the Pantone colors because it shows you kind of a digital Pantone chip in front of the color that you chose, the hex color. And some of them were way off. But for the most part, I tried it on a whole bunch of different color combinations, and it did a really good close proximity to from hex to RGB to Pantone color. Now, as I said, I fooled around with this, and the only way I was able to get to the Pantone was after I saved them to my library of colors. Then I would click on them, and then there was a little drop down where you were able to pick Pantone colors. So I don't know if there's a way to get to that when you're just experimenting with the colors without actually saving it. If there is, let me know. But I thought that might be something interesting out there. You can actually plug in your colors. If you know what your colors are, your hex colors, your RGB, your CMYK, you can plug those in there and then use this feature to find the closest approximate Pantone color to it. So as I said, I still like Coolors at coolors.co. That's still my go-to as far as color palettes. But it's nice to have more tools in the toolbox for whenever you need to do something. And it's kind of interesting that color.adobe.com has this Pantone feature that'll show you. And just for the record, color.adobe.com, that's color without the U, so the American spelling of it. But if you're looking for something or just want to fool around with creating colors, check them out. I'm sure you'll like it. And now, why fixed prices are better than hourly billing. How do you charge for your designs? Do you charge by the hour for the work you do? Do you charge some sort of fixed price based on how many hours you think the job will take? Meaning, do you look at a job and say, I think this one will take me 8 hours, so I'll bill them at 8 times whatever my hourly rate is? Or do you come up with a fixed price for what you think the job is worth? You look at a job and you say, I think this job is a $500 job or an $800 job or a $2,000 job. I want you to think about that. Now, I'm not actually asking how you come up with those rates or those prices. What I want to know is, do you know how much you're going to be paid on a project before you actually start it? So that's one of the differences. With fixed prices, you know before starting the job how much you're being paid. With hourly billing, you don't know because you don't know how long the job's going to take you. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole pricing strategy thing here. I already talked about that way back on episode 11 of the podcast. So if you want to know more about the various pricing strategies that you can use in your design business, go back and listen to that episode. Nor am I going to talk about value-based pricing when it comes to fixed pricing. Yes, value-based is a fixed price, but it's based on the value. And although I do think that value-based pricing is where every designer should aim to get to, not everybody is there at their stage in their career. So I'm going to leave that out now and just talk about fixed prices, just a solid price that you present to your client. Now, if you want to know more about value-based pricing, episode 110 of the podcast was all about value-based pricing. Today, I want to talk about why I think offering a fixed price, regardless of how you came up with that price, is better than simply billing by the hour. Now, I have to state that I do feel a little hypocritical talking about this because I originally built my design business. In 2005, when I started working from home part-time, I built my business on the fact that I did not offer fixed pricing. Every project I did at the beginning was billed by the hour for the exact amount of time that it took me to complete a project. I actually billed by the quarter hour. So I had my hourly rate. And I'll tell you, back when I started, my hourly rate was $50. And for $50, I would bill every 15 minutes was $12.50. So if I worked anywhere between 1 to 15 minutes on a job, that was the first quarter. As soon as 16 minutes hit, that was the second quarter. As soon as 31 minutes hit, that was the third quarter. And as soon as 46 minutes hit, I was into that final fourth quarter until the hour hit. At an hour and 1 minute, then I was billing my first hour plus a quarter hour. So I billed for the exact amount of time, and I would keep track. My invoicing software that I use, and I still use to this day, is Billings Pro. And it has a built-in timer that I can turn on whenever I'm starting a job, and it would keep track of things. And at the end, I would just invoice my client for the amount of time it took me to do the job. In fact, that was my biggest marketing feature. I can't tell you how many clients I won over because unlike other designers who were charging quote-unquote outrageous prices for their work, I only charged for the time I actually spent on a project. When I was attracting web clients, I used to tell them, you can go to another web designer that may price something like, here's an example. They would price $800 for the homepage and then $300 for each additional page. And I would tell them that sounds like a great deal, but once you create the homepage, okay, $800 is a fair price for the homepage. Then $300 for each additional page. Maybe it's $300 for the first additional page, but once that first page is built, you're just duplicating it and changing the content. So each additional page after that first one, you can build that page in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes max. And yet you're still charging the client, or they're charging the client $300 for each page. So I would tell them, you can do it that way, or you can just pay me for the exact amount of time that I would take to build a website. So back in those days, if I took 10 hours to build your website, you were charged $500. If I took 20 hours, it was a $1,000 website. And I convinced so many people to hire me because of that strategy, where they were only paying for the time I spent on the job. And that's how I grew my business. I spent years working like that, trading my time for money. Now that I don't do that anymore, and I look back at those days, I realize that I was actually doing a disservice to the whole design industry because I was treating myself like a commodity. I'm sure you can understand my thinking. Most services, after all, outside of the design industry, are billed by the hour. A lot of the business people, the very people who are hiring people like you, think in those terms as well. It's familiar to them. They pay their employees by the hour, so why shouldn't they be paying you by the hour as well? It took me several years before I realized that you and I, us creative people, we aren't selling our time. No, we are actually selling our talent. We're selling our skills. We're selling our experience. And, well, of course, we're also selling the final creative product, whether that's a logo, a pamphlet, a poster design, a website, whatever it is we create, we're selling that final product that we're providing to the client. We are not selling the process involved in creating that final product. And yet that's what billing by the hour actually is. For a business person that's used to paying people by the hour, it may seem logical to them that the faster you can produce your design, the less it should cost them. However, it's false to think that designers such as yourself should be paid on a level of difficulty of whatever project they take on, or be paid for how long a project takes them to complete. No, you should be paid for how much the final design piece you deliver is worth. It has nothing to do with how much time you spent on it. There have been times when I've been hired to create a logo and I've spent days working on it, coming up with concept after concept before finally getting it right. And yet there have been other times where I've been hired to design a logo and in less than an hour, I've come up with the perfect design to present to a client. So why should I be paid less just because inspiration hit me right at the start? I shouldn't, and neither should you. If you're a long-time listener of the podcast, you know how much I talk about the importance of building client relationships. Charging by the hour for your services creates a working relationship that actually has opposing interests between you and the client. If you are billing by the hour, it's actually in your best interest to take your time. Sure, you want to take the necessary time to complete the project to the best of your abilities and provide the client with a perfect design solution. So you're not slacking off and purposely adding time onto the project. Even if you don't do it out of greed, deep down you know that the longer you take, the more money you'll make. Now the client, on the other hand, has conflicting interests. Yes, the client wants the best work you can deliver, but at the same time, they want you to complete that work as fast as possible. Because for them, the more time it takes you, the more expensive the overall project will be. And that's why fixed prices are better. Charging a fixed price for your services alleviates that burden. The client is no longer worried about how much extra work this will cost them every time they ask for a revision. They won't be apprehensive about you saying something like, I've got an idea I want to try out here, and that sort of thing scares a client if they know they're paying you by the hour. I'm thinking back to something here. This is not design related, but I remember when our washing machine went on the fritz and I had to call a repair guy. I called somebody up and I knew that he charged a certain amount for a service call. I think it was $70 or $75. Anyways, that's not important. So I knew that just calling him, it was going to cost me, say, $75 plus whatever parts he had to install in the machine. And that $70 or $75, it didn't matter if he walked in and he went up to the washing machine and saw that, all it is something that has to be reset, because all these things have built-in computers these days. So maybe he has to press a couple of buttons in sequence, reset the thing, and all of a sudden it'd be fixed. And he'd be at my place for 5 minutes. Or if he had to come and install all sorts of new pieces that would have charged me, of course, more because of the pieces or the parts that would have to be replaced. But the service call itself would have been the same price, regardless if he spent 5 minutes there or 2 hours there. But if he was billing me by the hour, it would have been very different. The guy that came to repair my washing machine, he would walk into my house and I have a chair near my front door. He'd sit down in the chair, unlace his boots, take his boots off because he didn't want it. This was the winter and he didn't want to walk through the house with snow on his boots. So he would leave the boots by the front door, walk through the house to the laundry room. I would show him the washer. He'd look at it. Then if he realized that, I don't have the right tool, I have to go back out to my van to get it, he'd go sit down, lace up his boots. And if he was billing me by the hour, I would be thinking this whole time, it's like, hurry it up. Why do you have to lace up your boots? Just put them on, go out to your truck, get your thing. And I would be stressed out because I would want him to do the work as fast as possible. And it would bug me when I would see him taking his time, sitting down to lace up his boots. Or the time he'd just be talking and telling me a story about something that happened and he wasn't working. So me, being the client, would be much more apprehensive because of knowing that the more time he takes, the more it would have cost me. Well, the same thing happens with your design clients. Regardless of whether you're charging $200 for the project, $2,000 for the project, or $20,000 for the project, that's completely irrelevant. The fact that it's a fixed price is something that both parties, you and your client, can agree to before the project starts. And by coming up with that price and agreeing to that price beforehand, now it puts both of your interests in perfect alignment. You know how much you're being paid, regardless of how much time it takes you to do it, and the client knows how much the project is going to cost them. Time, the thing that was causing tension, is no longer part of the equation, which allows you and your client to now work unencumbered by conflicting interests. And you can concentrate on creating the perfect solution for your design problem. Now, with a fixed price, the faster you come up with and execute your idea, the better it is for you, because you end up getting paid more for your time per hour. It's like, say, if you, whatever price you set, $500 for a project, and you manage to come up with a solution in 2 hours, that's $250 per hour. So you're happy with that, and the client is still happy because they're getting the design at the price they agreed to. So you're both happy. Now, if it ends up taking you longer than you expected, so instead of taking 2 hours, it takes you 20 hours, yes, you get paid a lot less for your time, but you still knew going in how much you were being paid for that job. And now it's just a matter of dividing it amongst the time. And you use that as a learning experience so that the next time you do a job, you may know how to adjust your price accordingly. But even though it took you that extra amount of time, the client was okay with that extra time because it wasn't costing them anything more. Now, of course, the trick here is to come up with a price that both you and the client are okay with, should the project take longer than expected or should the project go really quick. So you have to be okay with whatever money you're getting for the time you spend, even though you're not exchanging money for time. And the client has to be okay with whatever you are providing them design-wise for that price. Now, I can tell you that when I stopped charging my clients by the hour and switched to charging a fixed price, I actually felt the relationships I had with my clients deepen because there was no more give and take from both sides, wondering what the final cost would end up being. Now, I don't have time in today's episode to go into how you should come up with your fixed price, but I will give you a few pointers that maybe you can share with your clients should the question come up of why you are charging a certain amount. So when you do get a question like, why are you charging $800 for a logo when there are services out there offering $20 logos? So that's a big thing. Whenever you offer a price to a client, a fixed price, you will often be asked to try to justify that price as opposed to hourly billing. If you say that you charge $100 per hour, client's going to say, well, okay, either I want to hire them at $100 an hour or I don't, and go for it. But if you say this project's going to cost you $800, the client's going to want to know, well, why is it going to cost me $800? Or some clients, not all clients, of course. But in order to justify your prices, should the client ask, you can let them know something like this. When you design, say, a logo or any design piece for that matter, whether it's a website, a poster, a brochure, a trade show booth, you get the idea. You are designing from a kind of marketing perspective. In other words, you are designing a marketing tool for your client's business, a tool that will represent the client for years to come and help them grow their business and generate income. Those people out there, or sites or businesses or whatever, that are offering inexpensive design, they aren't creating marketing tools. They're offering pretty images with no thought whatsoever or research behind what it is they do. And that's it. Explain that to the client. Those quick one and done logo services or whatever design thing, they don't care about the client. They don't care about their interests. They don't care about their growth. All they want to do is make something pretty for them, collect the money, and then move on to the next project. Marketing tools, especially those who surround the branding aspect of design, they involve strategy, and therefore they cost more. And that should be the justifiable part. In order to create the right piece for your client, you need to take the time to get to know the client. You need to know what they represent. You need to know how they operate. You need to know how the client thinks. These cheap design suppliers, they don't take that time because they don't care about the client. They just care about pumping out designs after design after design as fast as they can in order to make the money. So after explaining that to your client, then ask them a question. What do they think their business is worth? Tell them that how their company is represented to the masses out there, to their target market. That all starts with their branding. And if they think that that representation is only worth $20, $50, or $100, then so be it. Let them know that you're not the designer for them. They can go hire one of these cheap services. However, let them know that a professional, well thought out design that is a good representation of the company and everything the company encompasses should be worth a lot more than that. I've said it before on the podcast. Design should not be viewed as an expense. It should be viewed as an investment. And if you can explain that to your clients, then that will justify whatever price it is you're presenting to them. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. It doesn't matter how much you charge, whether you're just starting off and you're doing stuff for $200, $300, or $400, or you've been at this for a long time and you're doing stuff for $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $20,000 or more. Regardless of what it is you charge or how you charge, I hope you can see that a fixed price is way better than simply telling the client how much your hourly rate is and that they will pay based on the hours. Even though I said at the beginning that that's how I grew my business, that's how I got the ball rolling, that's how I got a lot of my clients. I know in hindsight, looking back, there was no way for me to sustain that or grow other than raising my hourly rate. But once I switched to fixed base, and I do value based and other things, but when I say fixed base, I just mean that you're giving them a price. This is what it's going to cost. When I switched to giving them a fixed price per project, I felt the relationship with the client grow because, as I said, that tension between how much time is he going to take on the project and how much is this project actually going to cost me in the end, that tension was now gone The client knew exactly how much they were paying, and they knew what to expect of me. And then it was just up to me to deliver in the most efficient way I could if I wanted to make the money on it. So that was today's topic. Now, I would love to hear from you. Let me know. Do you charge by the hour, or are you charging fixed pricing? And if you switched from one to the other, did you notice a difference in your clients when you did? Leave me a comment for this episode by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 169. Now, I'm running a little bit late in producing this podcast episode. I had to take a day off this week. My son was graduating from university, so I took a day off to go up for his graduation ceremony, which means I'm a little bit behind, and I'm just going to skip the question of the week this week and make this podcast a little bit shorter. But that doesn't mean I don't want questions. If you do have a question you'd like me to answer in a future episode of the podcast, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and submit yours. I would love to receive it. Something else I would love is to see you within the Resourceful Designer community. The community is turning into a very tight-knit group of designers who really are getting to know each other, helping each other out. We now understand each other's businesses. And I can even say we're becoming friends. More so than the friendship you make in Facebook groups and other things where there's thousands of people. This is a small group of dedicated designers who are willing to invest in their business by joining the community and using us as an accountability group or as a testing ground, as a sounding boards. And I think every person who is a member can honestly say that they're benefiting from being a member. If you want to know more of what the community has to offer, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/community. I would love for you to join. So that's it for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. I always appreciate you listening, whether it's your first time or your 169th time. I just want to say thank you. I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the best with your graphic design business, and as always, reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.